Hi, everyone, and welcome to Jehovah Boy. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Doug Smith, coming at you with another solo episode. Guests are great, but sometimes you, the listener, get to be the guest. How cool is that? I sent out a request asking for you to share your story. If you grew up a Jehovah's Witness, or you grew up in any religious extremist group, cult, sect, whatever it may be, I asked you to share your story. And you have heeded the call. My inbox has been flooded with all kinds of wild tales. One thing's for sure, if you grew up this way, your life was not boring. We thought we missed out on a bunch of stuff. We thought we missed out on a bunch of worldly activities, and we did, but it comes at a price. And these are pretty interesting tales, to say the least. So if you grew up Jehovah's Witness, which seems most of these emails are from people who grew up Jehovah's Witness, which is great. I'm happy to share your story, but it does not have to be limited to that. A cult's a cult. We share a lot of parallels with Scientologists, Mormons, Hasids. Did you grow up in something weirder than that? Even weirder? I bet you did. Maybe you did. Children of God? Let me hear your story. Were you part of NXIVM? Were you seduced by Keith Raniere? Spill the beans. I want to hear about it. There's a lot of parallels to be told, so I'd love to hear your story. Please keep those emails coming. JehovahBoyPodcast@gmail.com. Send in your story, and you could be featured on the show. If you want to continue to support the show beyond simply listening to it, which I truly appreciate, that alone makes my heart sing with joy. But if you want to continue to support the podcast beyond that, you can join the Patreon for just $5 a month. $5 a month is all it takes to help feed this poor, starving Jehovah Boy and grant you early access to full ad-free video of every episode. Patreon.com/Jehovah Boy. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@WhoDougSmith for extended clips from every episode. And most importantly, just tell people about it. Spread the word. Spread the good word. You don't have to knock on doors. You don't have to ring any doorbells. You don't have to hop in a car full of brainwashed zombies and go door to door. Just share it in your Instagram stories. Text a friend. Tell a coworker. Hop on a subreddit post. Do what you got to do. Just tell people about it. The growth of this podcast depends on you, and I really appreciate your support, and I really appreciate those emails. Without further ado, we are going to get into today's email sent in by Jordan G. Jordan G writes, Doug, saw the Stabby's World episode where you talk about being raised a JW and haven't stopped listening to your pod since. Did we all go through the same shit? Anyways, saw that you read experiences on your pod occasionally and wanted to share mine. See? This guy gets it. People have told me it's a pretty unique story. Anyways, thanks for what you're doing. Not many people understand our upbringing and how it shapes our reality even years after. I was born to a radically religious JW mother and a secular non-practicing father. My parents were high school sweethearts before my mother accepted the truth. Why do women insist on so much change? I don't mean to go down a misogynistic road here, but men are dolts, often resistant to any change at all, but what is with these women jumping headfirst into a cult? Can you make a small change and see how that feels? Renovate the kitchen. See how that grabs you. Might turn your whole world around. Renovate the kitchen. Get a new countertop. Paint the front door. If that doesn't work, then go ahead and brainwash your kids. But start small. Please, start small. You don't have to jump headfirst into a cult and sabotage your entire family. Jordan continues, my mom operated on a zero compromise policy. Absolutely no worldly influences. The only battle my dad won was sports. He played college basketball, and sports was one of the most important things to him. I vividly remember the battles my parents had once basketball, soccer, and t-ball registration rolled around every year. Yeah, you can't fuck with a sports fan father. One of my buddies growing up, who you may know if you're a loyal listener of this podcast. We did an AMA together, my buddy Mark Buzzy. We grew up the same congregation, same dynamic as well. His mom jumped feet first into the fire, and his dad was, wasn't enthused about it, but kind of went along with it. The amount of this is a parallel that I hear time and time and time again. It's really infuriating, honestly. But anyway, same thing. JW mother, non-believer father. His dad was a big sports fan, believed it was an important part of Mark's upbringing to have him participate in sports, which again, I get. It's not just about the sport. It's about camaraderie. It's about teamwork. It's about socializing. It's about working together. It's about discipline and commitment, showing up even if you don't want to. Important life lessons. But Mark's dad was adamant that Mark play sports. Mark has some athletic ability, but he's more of an intellectual. So I used to go to some of Mark's games, very envious because I was not allowed to play sports. My dad was a sports fan, but he was an older dad, and I think he knew that he didn't want his weekends sabotaged by shuttling me around from practice to practice. I see so many parents that immerse their kids in sports, and then a couple weeks in, they're like, oh, fuck, now my weekend's down the shitter. And then they have to try to discourage their kids from the sports because, they need them to finish the season or whatever. But then they realize they want their weekends back. So they got to plant these seeds. Like, you sure you want to play football? You're on a fast track to brain damage. Got to be honest with you. You look pretty gay in those soccer shorts. They got to plant these seeds and undo this sports commitment so they get their fucking weekend back. But anyway, Mark Buzzy's father enrolled him in sports, and I used to go to his games and be sitting on the sidelines, so envious that he was out there in left field in that uniform, and Mark was oblivious. He'd be staring up at the sky, looking at a jet stream overhead, or watching a butterfly fly past, ground balls whizzing past him left and right, dad screaming from the sidelines, Mark, pay attention! Mark was like Ferdinand the Bull, couldn't be bothered. He's picking flowers, sniffing the air, blissfully oblivious, and it was pretty hilarious. Anyway, you can't fuck with a sports fan father. They will lay down the law. So I'm glad your dad did that. I'm sure you learned some important life lessons that I did not. Jordan continues, sports quickly became my only refuge from religion. Weekend tournaments would sometimes get me out of Saturday service, and on special occasions, an early exit from Sunday meetings. But it always felt like look but don't touch. Teammates want to hang out, invite you to their house, to their birthday parties, and I was always the odd one out. I spent huge amounts of time workshopping lies to explain my abstinence from normal kid activities. Yeah, as I've shared before, I was an excuse machine. It's funny, it's ironic. You're taught as a Jehovah's Witness never to lie. Jehovah sees right through you. You can't hide. He sees every action, of course, but he knows your thoughts. You can't hide your thoughts, and you can't lie to yourself. You can't lie to him. You certainly can't lie to other people. You're told that liars will not inherit God's kingdom. So honesty is a pivotal part of the Jehovah's Witness foundation. But if you're remotely likable and other kids want to hang out with you, you're going to be lying your ass off just to get them off your back. Jordan continues, once I got to junior high, I was a top athlete, and without trying to sound like a douchebag, a good-looking kid. Too late. You're a douchebag. No, I'm sure. Sounds like you were a star athlete, good-looking. I'm sure you were a golden god. Girls liked me and wanted to be my girlfriend. An obvious thumbs fucking down. We only date to marry. I spent middle school fighting for my life against the gay allegations. LOL. This was just simply unacceptable. Yeah, you gotta be gay. What other reason would there be, right? You're 14 years old, you get boners when the wind hits you right, you got girls throwing themselves at you and you're turning them down. Obviously, you're a flaming homosexual. You tell your people you're a Jehovah's Witness, that doesn't That's not a valid excuse. They're like, what does that mean? You're Jehovah's Witness, so what? You joined the Church of the Holy Pole Smokers? You're gay, man. Just admit it. You're gay. The only thing that could possibly make sense for why you're turning down female attention as a middle schooler. Middle schoolers are the horniest creatures on the planet. They're disgusting. They're just covered in cum all the time. Sex is the only thing they can think about. They're vile creatures. So, yeah, I mean, I had girls ask me to dances. I had girls ask me out. And I also had to deal with some gay rumors. I heard some whispers. I heard some little murmurings. I think I may have said this before. I had a girl get a hold of some sidewalk chalk and write out in the courtyard in front of everybody. She had written, "Doug is gay." Luckily, there was another Doug in my class who was gay, so thankfully, gay Doug took the fall on that one. But yeah, you are going to be fighting gay allegations if you are turning down the ladies in middle school. Not a good look. All right, Jordan continues, I started living in JW terminology, the dreaded double life. Instead of going to the library with the bad kids, I snuck into school dances where I grinded on girls for the first time. Rock solid hard on for a week straight, LMAO. One of my buddies made me a MySpace, a cardinal sin, so I could flirt with chicks. Somehow I finessed my way into attending our 8th grade graduation dinner and dance, and secretly went with a girl that I'd had a huge crush on throughout middle school. On that night, I became a man and had my first makeout, another rock solid hard on, for a week straight. I was on cloud 9 until she told everyone how bad of a kisser I was, LMAO. Oh man, you think JWs are bad kissers? Just wait until intercourse gets thrown in the mix. You ain't seen nothing yet. But that's the thing. They don't get any practice. They're not able to assimilate to their sexuality like a normal adolescent. You know, you put it off for too long. It becomes this fearful thing because you know that when you start doing it, you're doing this shameful, horrible thing. Jehovah's watching you while you do it. I mean, you have the ultimate audience critiquing your every move, judging you, you know, basically giving you a death sentence because you're committing a cardinal sin, and you don't know what you're doing. You have all this pressure on you, and you've abstained from it for so long, you don't know what you're doing. You reach down a girl's pants like you're trying to pop the hood on a car that's not yours. You're like, where is that thing? I can't find it. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. Let your kids be whores when they're young, so they're not a huge disappointment to someone later on. 8th grade, though, honestly, that's not so bad for a first kiss. That's not that delayed. 8th grade, that's kind of on track, I think. My first kiss, I was 17. I was in a hot tub in Florida at my buddy's parents' timeshare, and I was hammered on Captain Morgan slushies. We went to the 7-Eleven that morning, got a 32-ounce slushie, and just kept capping it off with Captain all day long. So by 6 p.m., I was annihilated. She was too. All I remember is the sound of our teeth clacking together. It sounded like a kid running a stick along a picket fence. And I passed out at one point. All I remember is waking up at the bottom of the hot tub with just a fluorescent bulb in front of my face. Her 12-year-old brother pulled me to safety. This kid saved my life. Thank God for sober 12-year-olds. What a saint, too. I was giving his big sister the worst makeout session of her life, and he still found it in his heart to save my life. Jordan continues, in high school, my basketball skills continued to develop. Due to my strict lifestyle, the only thing I was really allowed to do outside of school and meetings was practice. My freshman year, I played varsity and was acknowledged as a top 10 player in my class statewide. Like most JW youth, I hated going to meetings and being out in the ministry, but learned to play the game. I answered, gave talks, and told people how I was working toward baptism. But my desire to live a normal life was beginning to consume my life. Going into sophomore summer, I was basically the only kid in the continental U.S. without a cell phone. I hear you, man. I, too, had no cell phone for quite some time. My mom made a slight allowance, and She let me get a pager. No one paged me. I don't know what I needed a pager for. I wasn't a drug dealer or a contractor. What the hell do I need a pager for? My older brother, God bless his heart, he would often call me from the other room just to make me feel like not quite so much of a loser, but that was it. My pager would go off. Oh, it's my brother. I just pop my head out the door, wave to him in the kitchen. Hey, man, saw you called. Good to hear from you. All right, Jordan continues. Surprisingly, my mom said that if I acted right all summer, she'd get me one. Cell phone, not a pager. For the next 3 months, I answered multiple times at every meeting, was enthusiastic in the ministry, never groaned when it was time to study, or braided the tassels on my custom Bible to pass the time. Once September hit, I just knew I was going to get that phone, but when I brought up the topic to my mom, she simply said, I never said that. In retrospect, this seems somewhat trivial, but marked the official end of my time cosplaying as a good JW boy. I don't think this is trivial at all. You need some motivation to slog your way through all this shit. You know, especially if you're not one of these Pollyanna kids who actually believes all this mumbo-jumbo. We do it because we're kids. We don't have a choice. We're under our parents' thumb as long as we're living under their roof. And the time and energy, the demand placed on you as a kid, and this kid's playing sports, he's in school. So already, if you're in school during the day, you have homework that you have to do at night. You also have practice after school, practice and games on weekends. Where the fuck did this kid have time to... This kid did not have a moment of free time, I guarantee you. Because even if you just... I didn't play sports. I also didn't do my homework. Because I didn't have fucking time to do my homework. And also the idea of higher education, going to college, was off the table. So it didn't really matter if I did well in school. I didn't have to try hard or give a shit at all. And still, I had no free time in terms between going to meetings, personal Bible study, prayer, family Bible study, meetings, if I didn't already meetings, and going out in the ministry every weekend. There is no free time. This kid did not have a moment to himself. So if his mom promised him a cell phone, and then couldn't cash in on that promise, yeah, fuck her. That's not trivial at all. From that moment, I never answered at another meeting, talked at a door, going door to door, or faked a positive attitude. Elders consulted, brothers and sisters gossiped, and my mom was seething. I didn't care. Over the next 2 years, if my mom didn't force me to get up and get dressed for meetings, I wasn't going. This battle occurred 3 times a week until one random Sunday I heard my mom up and bustling, heels clicking. I awaited my fate, destined for 2 hours of boredom. But instead of the clicking sound of Steve Madden's inching closer and closer, my mom's steps grew faint. The garage door opened, the car started, and the garage door closed. My mom had officially given up. Before she left, my mom walked up to my dad and told him, "He's your problem now." My mom and I barely spoke a word to each other my entire senior year of high school. Wow, I had tremendous pressure put on me because I was the last one standing of all my siblings. You know, my siblings were all much older than me, 14, 16, and 18 years older than me. Most of them were out of the house, you know, by the time I was a toddler. So I was, you know, and as I've said before, your worth, your status in the congregation is contingent on your entire family being on board. If you got a couple of stragglers, you're kind of looked down upon. You're like, you didn't do your job. You didn't brainwash your kids to the best of your ability. If you really did your job, you'd have a whole fucking family of zombies out knocking on doors. So yes, when you have people deviating from the organization, the congregation, going astray, you're looked down upon. So all of my siblings were out the door. So my mom, it meant everything to her. This was the most important thing. This was her world. So I became like I've said, I became the Obi-Wan. I was the last hope. There was all this pressure on me to stay devoted in the ministry, in the organization. So I did it, basically, not because I wanted to, not because I believed it. I did it to keep her from killing herself. But man, I read this and I'm envious because this guy just exercised nonviolent protest and it worked. It's like, why the fuck didn't I do that? What would my mom have done? She was pretty strong, but I don't think she was going to hog tie a 17-year-old and throw him in the trunk and drive him to the meetings. I mean, maybe she would have. I don't know. It was pretty important to her. She might have made the effort. But good for you, man. Good for you for standing your ground and sticking it to the man. Jordan continues, I finished my senior year as the top basketball recruit in the state and earned a Division I scholarship. I played in 2 NCAA tournaments and 1 NIT. Again, not a sports fan. I don't know what the fuck NIT is. National something. I don't know. Scored over 1,000 points in my career and was an all-conference player. I was good enough to play professionally overseas for 4 seasons. Again, I don't know shit about sports, but that seems like a big deal to me. That's pretty fucking impressive. I have 2 bachelor's degrees and a master's. I live in a metro city and have the best group of friends I could ever ask for. I can truly say I've lived almost all the dreams of a young JW who was scared the world would end before he ever got a chance to play high school basketball. However, my life has not been without immense struggle due to, in large part, my Jehovah's Witness upbringing. Because dating was only for marriage and sex was not to be spoken of, besides abstinence, I had 0 talks with my parents of what it meant to be a good partner and what a healthy relationship looks like. I learned all of that stuff at 18 from teammates and classmates a couple years older than me. I spent the last 10 years unlearning all of those lessons. My 20s were spent living a life of indulgence, making up for lost time and experiences, showcasing my autonomy to the world. I actually developed a problematic drinking habit after returning back to the U.S. and got a DUI. Yeah, lucky that's all you got, but yes, same, brother. No DUI. I'm a fantastic drunk driver, but as a full-blown alcoholic pothead with the blackout scars to prove it, a sober one, albeit, I fully concur. You know, you go off the rails, trying to make up for lost time. You're trying to get on the fast track to freedom and a life of indulgence that you felt like you missed out on. Yeah, doesn't work. There's a high rate of alcoholism, drug addiction, suicide from ex-Jehovah's Witnesses because you're trying to make up for lost time. There is no such thing. It can't be done. But, you know, there's an unwillingness to a certain degree to admit that these formative years, this adolescent period has just been taken away from you and you'll never get it back. It's quite a mind fuck, for sure, but it sounds like he came out the other side. Jordan continues, as a 31-year-old, I look back on my experience as a witness with a completely negative lens, but know my mom was just doing what she thought was best to protect us. I have repaired my relationship with my mother, and surprisingly, we have the best relationship we've ever had, probably because I never got baptized. A huge contingent of my family is still Jehovah's Witness. My nephew tells me every time I see him how I won't be in the new system and asks me to come back to Jehovah. But that's okay. Thanks for providing a space for all of us ex-JW kids to compare horror stories. It's incredibly cathartic. You're very welcome, Jordan. And it's amazing that your mom came around. Sometimes tough love doesn't work. That is the hope. The hope, you know, the whole point of ostracizing and shunning your non-believing family members is this, basically this thinking that if you ice them out long enough, they'll come crawling back with their tail between their legs. Which, you know, that's not what you want. That doesn't mean that they're going to be humble, devoted servants of Jehovah with their heart in it. They're just going to come back out of fear of not wanting their family to fall apart. That's really not the kind of members that you want, but that's the tactic that they use. It's punishment, ostracizing and shutting them out so that they feel as though if they want to have their family back, they have no other option. But, when you leave, you get a fresh start, you get a foot in the real world, establish a friend group and a sense of community. Oftentimes, these parents will see, sometimes it takes a long time. Sometimes it takes a really long time, but eventually they see, all right, you're an upstanding member of society, you got a job, you got friends, you're a responsible adult, you're not hurting anyone, you're not some drug-addled, criminal-minded sexual deviant. They might welcome you back because they know that you're not a threat. All these threats of the outside world turning you into a monster. That's what they fear. They think that the outside world is going to turn you into a monster. And when they see you escape this cult and thrive in the real world, and you're not a monster, you make a happy life for yourself. You may get married to a non-believer. You may have children, raise them as non-believers, have a happy, upstanding, fulfilling family life, and they see, oh, okay, maybe the outside world isn't quite the harmful haven of Satan worshipers that we thought it was. That's what they believe. They think that Babylon the Great is going to corrupt you and warp your mind and turn you into this twisted, horrible monster who spits in the face of Jehovah. And it's often not the case. Yeah, sometimes people go off the rails. They wind up drug-addled lunatics. But if they're lucky, they get a foothold in the real world and they thrive. So what's the threat? Then you're just gonna turn a blind eye to this person who's your flesh and blood, who's living a happy life. So I'm glad that your mom welcomed you back. I'm glad you stood your ground. You didn't let the bastards get you down. And as far as your nephew, who's still trying to give you a guilt trip on not making it into the new system, he's old enough to know the new system is bullshit. Live fast, die young. Satan rules, Jehovah drools. You got to tell him straight, man. This is your time to tell him the truth, the real truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God. But thank you so much, Jordan, and really appreciate you sharing your story. Keep those emails rolling in, folks. See how great this was? It's a beautiful story. Happy ending. The happy ending. I love ones with a happy ending. I don't know if I've shared any that have not a happy ending. If maybe because people that don't have a happy ending probably are lying face down in a gutter. They don't have a laptop or a smartphone in which they can even access a podcast and be able to send me an email in the first place. Maybe that's why all these stories have happy endings. But I'm glad to hear that you have assimilated to life in the real world and made a happy and fulfilling life for yourself. That it's very reassuring to me and all the other people that are still stuck in this organization. I now know of this term, PMO, physically in, mentally out. There's all these people that are still in. They're afraid of leaving because of this very thing. They're afraid of their mom or their entire family icing them out and cutting them off. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to lose their fucking family. So if you have to make a choice, yeah, you got to weigh the pros and cons. Some people say, fuck it, I'll give up my family because I'll be happier in the outside world without a family than I will with this family that's guilting me into this belief system that's complete bullshit. So I'm glad things worked out. Keep those emails rolling in. I really appreciate it. And it's an honor to be able to share your story on the show. JehovahBoyPodcast@gmail.com. And like I said, you don't just have to be a J-dub. Any sort of religious extremism, I want to hear your story. If it's not you, you know somebody else, tell them about the pod. Tell them I want to hear their story. Please keep them rolling in. Support the Patreon, patreon.com/JehovahBoy, youtube.com/@WhoDougSmith. If you're not already following me on Instagram, @WhoDougSmith. Most importantly, spread the word. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to my producer. I wish I remembered to thank him every episode, but without him, this podcast would not be possible. So big shout out and a big thank you to George, my producer. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'll see you next week. Goodbye.